Optimal training isn't what you think it is. It's common for the fitness industry to pressure you into training in a way the creator believes is optimal for you, but the reality is optimal training looks a little different for everyone. And not so much in terms of just things like physical leverages or structure differences, muscle insertion differences, things like this, but more along the lines of optimizing what is most important for you psychologically. There are two main camps, or at least two camps who have noticeably louder voices than the rest when it comes to this optimal training debate. One of them prioritizes optimal training in terms of usually biomechanics, exercise selection, things like this, and the other believes training enjoyment is the top priority. When you're first coming onto the scene of lifting, or at least partaking in the fitness industry more, you'll tend to fall for the philosophy you hear first. You come in with an open mind, and your brain is a sponge for information and inspiration. After all, both of these camps are correct and valuable in various ways. So if the first YouTube niche you discover happens to be all about biomechanics, what is there to disagree with? Why would you not adopt their approach? And this goes both ways. If you stumble upon channels that say barbells are the best because they're the most enjoyable implement to train with, how exactly can you disagree with that? While both the biomechanics experts and the enjoy your training bros both have valid cases, you can't exactly argue which camp is more optimal than the other because that's individual. So, if we know it's all individual, how do you determine which is right for you? To put it simply, the way to find your own version of optimal training is to discover what motivates you. It sounds very basic on surface level. All that takes is some self-awareness and reflection. Again, easy stuff, right? Of course, you can abuse this and simply pick something that's easy just because you happen to enjoy it, which is very common in the fitness industry. But I guess my self-awareness point still stands. To give a more specific example of finding out what motivates you, I'll use my own example. What's motivated me for the vast majority of my life and lifting career is results. I'm a very results-oriented person, as you guys know. I've always just wanted to be as jacked as possible, even when I was a little kid. Like, I remember going to, I think it was Olympia Sports with my brother. I think I was 7, and I just went straight to the dumbbell rack and picked up the heaviest dumbbells I could curl for a couple reps, which was 8 pounds per side, and I still have those dumbbells. But tangent aside, I've always just wanted to be as jacked as possible. I've never really cared what needed to be done to get those results because anything associated with optimal results or my goal physique instantly becomes enjoyable. I was and still am obsessed with the results. I'm obsessed with the outcome. Measuring my arms at 18 inches was far more fulfilling than the act of lifting ever was or ever could be. I hate running, but if in an alternate universe running was the best way to grow your quads, I'd be an ultramarathoner by yesterday. If you're someone who is motivated by your training and looks forward to the lifts you enjoy and are okay with getting sub-maximal results, that's perfectly valid as well, and there is a case for this to be made as well. If you can achieve most of your maximal potential results with a method you love, that's better than forcing yourself to train in a way that bores you, and you won't be getting maximum results with the mindset you have going into that anyways. Training enjoyment would win in this case. It's comparable to your job choice. If you're someone whose passion is collecting sports cars, then you'll need a high-paying job regardless of how stressful that might be. It doesn't matter to you because you need to support your goal of collecting sports cars. A job that's easier and more enjoyable but pays less is cool, and at least it's like a little less stressful. But now that paycheck you need to support your hobby isn't there, so the job serves no purpose for you and your goal. Saving a little stress does less for you than fulfilling your life purpose ever could in this case. This is applicable to all of us. Now that you have an idea of what camp you fall under between optimal training, maybe closer to the biomechanics definition or the enjoyable definition, what else can you do? It seems pretty black and white, right? Well, not exactly, because there are other aspects of your training you can improve regardless of what side you pick. The most important thing, once you know what training approach motivates you, is to eliminate or mitigate anything that demotivates you, which in my opinion is equally as important. if not more important. Motivation goes beyond just the tangible program, too. You have to think outside the box. How does your environment affect your motivation positively or negatively? And even in this case, it goes beyond just the physical environment. How does your mental environment and your overall state of mind affect your motivation? Does the gym you train at irritate you when you're training because the equipment is subpar or maybe the atmosphere is lazy? What about your content consumption? Does scrolling on social media breed feelings of envy or at least some distaste towards those narcissistic influencers who are supposedly on these platforms to motivate you? If that's the case, why do you always feel worse after scrolling through Instagram or something like TikTok? Does your motivation skyrocket like these influencers promise will happen if you follow them? Or does that motivation given to you by these influencers just feel like a lazy attempt at poking the deeply ingrained instinct you have to keep up with the Joneses while you keep going back and forth over whether ignoring this feeling means you're being lazy or if you recognize deep down that these people are trying to use you for likes and follows? Letting a mental state like this continue to exist in your psyche usually doesn't end well. Whether it's resentment towards training, being dissatisfied with your results without recognizing your perception is skewed, or the overwhelming feeling of counting down the clock until your next training session that you don't want to do, you're now stuck. Either your training and psychological well-being suffers, or you stop training, which you could say still affects both, even if it's a bit refreshing in some ways. You might be thinking, what's the big deal? It's just lifting. And I agree, at surface level, it is just lifting. If you're looking at it with no emotions tied to it or no feelings tied to it, it's just training. You can say that about anything in life. It's just this. It's just that. It's a very boring way and very non-human way to look at things. The problem with this way of thinking is when training is what brings you fulfillment in life, regardless of whether it's from the enjoyment of the lifts themselves or the results that you get, your ability to reach that fulfillment and scratch that itch is now tainted. So the question is, what's next? To answer that question, you simply have to optimize your training. And I say simply, kind of sarcastically. And what's optimal for you now might be different than what was optimal for you when you started. Yeah, of course, the actual training has to change over time in order to go from beginner to intermediate or advanced to elite. This is much different. But what you need to find out is what's most optimal for you given the current context of your state of mind and your physical status as a lifter. Specifically, the former is what we'll be talking about in this video. Here are some outside of the box ways to optimize your training and your approach to training. The first one is to change the way you view or consume your training content. Does watching that influencer have you subconsciously living vicariously through them? So by the time you're out of work and driving to the gym, your desire to lift is half gone? If so, maybe lock your apps during the day and instead spend some time planning and anticipating your own training. Maybe the gym you lift at has a lazy atmosphere to it and it kills your motivation. If the equipment's nice and it's close by, but you dread being in that place, maybe try building a home gym. Or even driving to the cooler gym that's 30 minutes away, even if it's a bit inconvenient and costs you some more gas money. I know not everybody can do this, but it's at least an option, and most people can make something like this happen, regardless of how busy you might be. I've done this in the past, and it's revitalized my excitement for lifting. The best example I have right now is me doing this again by building kind of like a basic bare bones outdoor gym, or at least doing some of my lifting outside, just bringing my equipment out there. I know not everyone has a home gym, but there's ways around this, whether you are a commercial gym person or a home gym person. Another one is surrounding yourself with other serious lifters. I get it, serious lifters are a rare kind, so this is easier said than done. But that's why I see so much value in YouTube, at least in the right corners of it. It is a double-edged sword, but if you know how to properly use something like YouTube as a viewer or even as a creator in some cases, it can be of great benefit to you as a lifter. Just don't be the guy that cares more about someone else's training than your own. And remember, your training isn't just an hour a day like your calendar shows. And this is probably the most important part of this whole discussion, really this whole video. Your brain still anticipates and prepares for that training session throughout the day, or the night before if you're a morning lifter, for example. How you use that anticipation is up to you. Do you usually fear that workout because you're afraid you won't see progression? Does that anticipation become overridden by the dread of getting uncomfortable? We all know that one lift or that one muscle group that's just brutal to train, and we all know the discomfort that lifting comes with. The cool part about changing your anticipation is you don't necessarily have to change anything physical in your training or in your program. You just need to reconstruct your perspective. If feeling uncomfortable during a lift is causing dread in the prior hours, you need to think about the outcome of that session and what you're getting out of it. You're focused on the discomfort while forgetting about the reward it comes with, which is a biased and skewed perspective and will hold you back. Maybe you do embrace the reward that comes with the training, but now that dreadful anticipation of discomfort has turned into like a certain anxiety over not seeing your desired results. To fix this, try remembering the feeling of anxiety exists because you genuinely care about your training, and it's a privilege to have that feeling. It nearly guarantees maximal effort and perfect consistency. Most things in lifting, really life in general, but lifting in this case, are balanced between something positive and something negative, to put it simply. For each negative feeling or association with lifting that you have, you can use that to search for a positive that balances it out, which does exist. This isn't about whether it exists or not, it's about your awareness to its existence, and this will improve your training as a whole. It's easier said than done, but your version of optimal training is waiting for you, and it's up to you to discover it.